Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Martha Miller, and I'm Deputy Executive Director of the National Security Institute at not the main campus, but the George Mason Antonin Scalia Law School. We are actually a founding sponsor of the Iron Butterfly podcast, and so we're very excited and proud to introduce Iron Butterfly to you today, live and in person. This is their 7th season and the last episode of this year on campus, on university campuses. And so this is a pretty special treat at George Mason today to have them with us. I will now let Brittany and Valentina speak to you. They are students that we are familiar with and have worked with in the past, and I'm just very proud to introduce Brittany and Valentina to you today.
Welcome to George Mason University. We are so excited to host the Iron Butterfly podcast today. George Mason is known for its innovation, diversity, and focus on cutting-edge technology. Within George Mason, the prestigious Antonin Scalia Law School has an emphasis on law, economics, and global security, earning them national recognition. The law school is also home to the National Security Institute, which leads critical research on international security, cybersecurity, and foreign policy issues. Through George Mason and the Scalia Law School, students are able to delve into key areas like international law, AI regulation, and global digital privacy. With its proximity to Washington, D.C., George Mason University, the Scalia Law School, and the National Security Institute are at the forefront of international, legal, political, and tech conversations. And now to Valentina to introduce the Iron Butterfly podcast.
Welcome to the Iron Butterfly podcast. Today's episode is titled The Future is Female. Megan Jaffer and Katie Hopkins are the co-founders of Iron Butterfly Media and will be your hosts. 80 years ago, Eloise Page, the original butterfly, joined the Office of Strategic Services, trailblazing a path for what ultimately became the United States intelligence community. She rose to the ranks from secretary to case officer, defying the norms of her time, and eventually became the first female chief of station at the CIA. Eloise was known among her colleagues to be a fierce fighter with a core of steel, and she earned the codename Iron Butterfly. Our podcast continues her legacy, inviting the unsung heroines of the U.S. intelligence community to share their stories with aspiring leaders like you.
Today, we are joined by two intelligence community leaders. Chandra Osann, a graphic designer by trade, Chandra Osann began her career creating graphics for the private sector. She later moved into government, supporting analytics teams at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency, before landing at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence as chief of the National Counterterrorism Center's media design team. One of her more memorable roles since changing her career path was as the deputy director of ODNI's Lateral Innovation Division. In this role, she used her expertise and unique perspective to build and promote a user-centered intelligence community. Another noteworthy experience was as a visualization manager, where she worked with analysts across the community to facilitate the development of visuals for the President's Daily Brief. In her current role as deputy executive, Chandra is focused on identifying, building, and scaling tools, processes, and capabilities that enable greater data and information sharing. When she's not looking for ways to create change in government, she enjoys hobbies like art, eating, and making cocktails. A fun fact about Chandra, she's a lettering artist, and as a side hustle, spends her spare time inspiring, empowering, and uplifting others through the art form, including selling her art and teaching lettering workshops. Welcome to Chandra Osann. Our next guest is Rachel Grunspan. Rachel Grunspan is a senior executive at the Central Intelligence Agency, where she leads the Directorate of Digital Innovation's Future Scenarios portfolio, specifically looking at emerging technologies and how AI and human machine learning could evolve the intelligence profession. During her time in the intelligence community, Rachel has had the opportunity to hold some of her favorite positions. She served as the Dean for DDI University, the CIA schoolhouse, for digital tradecraft and acumen. She was also the IC's director for Augmenting Intelligence Using Machines program called AIM. And she was a member of the design team for the CIA's newest directorate. In this role, she helped create and establish an office called Digital Futures. Rachel was also responsible for launching the first analytic game program at the National Counterterrorism Center. Currently, she enjoys her ongoing role designing games and simulations at CIA on a variety of topics. Rachel is a published author on the history of computers, enjoys abstract painting and knitting. She is married and a soccer mom to 2 girls. Her family describes her as persistent and goofy. A fun fact about Rachel, she has a synasm, a condition where one sense is simultaneously triggered by another sense. In her case, seeing numbers and letters evokes color and personality associations. Welcome to Rachel. And now to Megan and Katie.
Thank you. Oh, is this on? It's on. Okay. I'm technologically just not there. Everybody
good
knows.
because we're here for the future.
I know we're here for the Futures Female, so they can teach us. So, Brittany, Valentina, Martha, thank you so much. We also cannot thank NSI and George Mason enough. Like Martha said, NSI was our founding sponsor, and they are how we got started. So we thank them for doing this for us today. We also want to just pause before we get started and thank everyone who's here today. It is because of our listeners that we can continue to do this. And so for the folks that are in the room, the folks that are going to hear this on YouTube and Spotify and Apple in 2 weeks when we post it, thank you all for your support because that's how we keep going with Iron Butterfly Podcast and Iron Butterfly Media. So I'm going to pass it over to Katie for our first question and get this started.
Awesome. So we just heard these amazing bios of these panelists. And I always, obviously we know these women, but I think when you hear the bio all at the same time, it's like overwhelming. You're like, oh my gosh, these are like real badass ladies. But we also know that the bio only tells part of your story, right? We believe that firmly at Iron Butterfly. So we're going to start with a fun question to get to know you all a little bit better. And so our question is, if you had a superpower, what would it be and why? And Rachel, we'll start with you.
I think is this on? Yeah, okay. I think it would be to the ability to slow time down, basically. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, my kids wanting to just kind of savor every moment. But also there's some intelligence applications to that with respect to adversaries and being
Shocking.
able to make better decisions. Yeah, slowing time down at will.
Love it.
Like when you say slow time down, do you mean like stop time completely? Like how long would you want to slow time down for?
I think I would want to selectively slow it down for certain people.
Oh. And maybe speed it up for others.
And then speed it up.
I think that was unspoken.
And then speed it up when there's, I was going to say something with kids, but I won't.
Gotcha. Yeah. Awesome. Chandra, what about you?
Well, first, I want to say that this morning I was listening to a great Creative Mornings podcast out of Baltimore, and they featured a 14-hour clock, so I think you'd really appreciate that. But for me, I think mine was a twofer, right? So one, I want to be able to learn anything quickly. I feel like anytime I go into a new situation, I'm very overwhelmed, and I just digest information. I'm that person in the meeting that says nothing, and then afterwards I have all the questions. Mm-hmm. And so I basically want to be in the meeting, picking everything up very quickly so I can contribute right then instead of later. And then second, because I'm a very visual person, I want to be able to take what's in my head and translate it visually on paper exactly the way I'm seeing it in my brain.
We are like two peas in a pod because I am exactly the same way. I feel like that, I guess you can use that. It could be your superpower, but it also could be a negative, right? I've
true.
often felt like when I'm in a meeting, there's so many things I'm thinking or I want to say, but I want to wait, or it comes to me later when I'm at home and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have said that. So
Yeah,
I
that was
totally
my
get
moment.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Those are great.
Those were really great. So before we go on to the next question, I did want to let you know that we are going to open it up for questions at the end for students only. We like to get the student engagement and get you all involved. So think about your questions now.
We're giving you more time, so we're not making you think about it on the spot like Chandra's superpower.
Right.
You have a few minutes to think about it.
Right. So we're going to kind of dive into your careers a little bit because I think a lot of people will find it fascinating. So could you tell us how you support the intelligence community currently in your roles? And what's the coolest thing about your job and organization? So Chandra, let's start with you.
Okay, so as I was sharing before things got started, I literally just started my job on the 15th. So I'm just getting spun up on everything. But my job is to, like it was stated in my bio, really just identify opportunities to either leverage or develop new capabilities for use across the community. A lot of the times you'll see silos of excellence and redundancies because this was my idea, and then I look across and, oh, there you are at that agency and you have the same stinking idea. So my job and my colleagues' jobs are to identify those redundancies, and make them available, just across the board. So just like a one-stop shop for capabilities, tools, processes, wherever we can, so build, scale, and share. I would say that one of my favorite things so far in this current job has just been the community that we built so very quickly. It's interesting that everybody brings something different to the table. As you heard, my background is in graphic design. And so I came in thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to contribute. But already because of my different way of thinking and seeing things, I've been able to contribute. And that's the same for everybody else. And I think, like I shared with you guys also, is the fact that my mentor is now my boss. And so just being able to learn from him has been excellent, and being able to do it now, kind of like in real time, is, I think, a blessing for me.
I think what we've learned from all the Iron Butterflies that we've interviewed, and what I think is so important that we share, and what you just shared with us, is that especially for the folks that are students who are coming up and want to join the intelligence community, for the folks that are listening to these podcasts, is you can come from any space, any background, any major. All are welcome in the intelligence community. And we always give the example of Sue Gordon, who rose to the ranks of being one of the most senior women, and she was a zoology major, right? There are drama majors, there are doctors, there are so many different, you can come from so many different backgrounds and majors. We often get that question. So I'm glad that you shared that with us, that, I was a graphic designer. Where can I fit in? And yet that's the beauty of it, right? Is that there's that diversity of thought. So thanks, Rachel.
So right now, my job, I guess, is probably as close as you could get to a futurist there, but I would not call it that. And what I do is my team and I look at how the intelligence profession might evolve as a result of AI and emerging technologies. Ironically, the person who actually brought me into that job to do that work was Jennifer Eubank, who just had amazing lady, former boss of mine. But I work with an amazing team. We do a variety of different activities to try and get some insight on that. In particular, a woman named Liz Vanderveen and Jessie Smith are on the team. And a lot of what we do has to do with speaking to a lot of people, doing games and simulations, and trying to understand pathways that just would not be obvious. We did a game a few years ago called Future Shock, and it was intended to try and understand kind of the future with respect to quantum computing. What are the different pathways that could happen? Let's see. Funnest thing, or coolest thing about my job, probably just that I get to do this work. It's kind of a different flavor of intelligence. I have amazing bosses that let me do this type of work, and it's not driven by the crush of daily taskings and crises that you would expect to happen at CIA. So I have a lot of space to do much more strategic work that hopefully is providing value in a variety of ways.
So I know you, but when I first met you and you told me that you worked on gaming and simulations, I had no idea what that meant. So I'm wondering if you could just share a small tidbit for those students who are like, that sounds kind of cool. What, I know you shared a little bit, but what does that actually mean?
So right now, what it largely means in practice is it's similar to just large war games or small war games. So you have a scenario that you want to explore, and you decide what the intelligence question is, and then you staff it with people in roles that know how to play that position. You might have somebody who was a former member of the National Security Council or who knows particular technology background. And I like to do strategic pathway games. So you don't know what's going to happen. You present the players with the situation, and then you see where it takes you, and you control it and do injects in different ways. Where we'd like to take it is much more digital, to take advantage of technology and all that can offer with respect to the promise that AI can bring as a possible teammate when it comes to human-machine teaming.
Awesome, thank you.
So I would love to know what is like a good day in the intelligence community? Like, can you tell us what your best day in the intelligence community was, or just like a moment that you looked around and thought to yourself, like, it's incredible that I get to do this every day? Rachel, we'll start with you first this time.
I've had a lot of pretty fun days. I'll mention one of them a number of years ago. So when I was running DDI University, my deputy and I, we had a big meeting that was coming up, and we had to make a decision around investing in virtual reality capability that we were working with In-Q-Tel on. And the meeting was happening the next day or a couple of days from then. For whatever reason, neither of us had made it to the In-Q-Tel Summit that year, where this capability, it's actually called Dreamscape Immersive, was being demoed. And this is not a capability where you can just put a headset on. This is like full-on immersive. It's a giant environment, huge sensory experience. They're pumping smells through the cage and the platform. And the only place at the time that you could really experience this was in a consumer environment. And it happened to be in Century City Mall in Los Angeles. And we had this big meeting, and the only data we really didn't have was the experiential of what we were going to go in and talk about. So we got on a plane at like 7 a.m. one morning, flew to Los Angeles. We were on the ground for like an hour. We went through the VR. We went to the mall. I think we did something called like Alien Zoo and like the Curse of the Black Pearl. I don't know. And then we drove back to the airport, got in the plane, flew home the same day. It was a good thing that we did, because we ended up doing an investment. It ended up helping to train a lot of different officers. Yeah.
Why do you think that day sticks out in your mind?
Because it was ridiculous. Like, it was the fact that we had to have some information that you could not read about. You couldn't just study up. You actually had to go and experience the technology. That this meeting we had to walk into was an incredibly big deal, and that the only way to experience it at that moment was to go to the technology, which happened to be on the other side of the country. So it was a ridiculous day, but it was great. It was fun, and we got the information that we needed to walk in and make a decision that ended up, I think, having a pretty big impact on a lot of students.
I'll also just mention that Rachel has been on Iron Butterfly podcast before, and when we did our prep call with her, she was at an amusement park with a screaming children on a roller coaster in the background. So I love that you said that it was ridiculous, because I feel like you have also brought us that ridiculousness as well.
I'm happy to anytime.
So what about you, Chandra?
So I knew that I was in the right place with my team when I was chief of this media design team in NCTC. I started there in 2011, and I was there till about, I think, 2017, 2018. Loved that team. And I think we just built, an amazing culture on that team, where it got to a point where we had analysts coming in and hanging out, or the NCTC director would come in and hang out and just hey guys, what are you doing? Can you make me a map? So it was, it was a really great experience. But one of the best things that, one of the biggest things I enjoyed with that team was every year, for several years, we had the, I would say the luxury, but really the opportunity to design and produce the annual NCTC counterterrorism calendar. And it's a huge production, right? So we had a print version, and we had an online interactive media version, both unclassified. So, I mean, there would be, in January, there would be a Washington Post column to kind of announce it. It was a really big thing for our team. My team was a team that got to be, behind the look and feel of this publication. Anyway, my team was, multidisciplinary. So we had graphic designers, cartographers, and interactive media producers, and me. And one of the things that I wanted to do to really just bring everybody to the table was create a competition. So let's have a competition for the cover design. And so this gave not just the graphic designers, but the cartographers and the interactive media producers an opportunity to try something they hadn't tried before. And, funny enough, a couple of cartographers made that cover. Do you know what I mean? And some of the most beautiful covers that we produced were folks that were not on the graphic design side of things. And that cover design actually was what informed the design for the remainder of the publication. So what you saw inside was a result of what was produced on the outside. And then same with the online version. So for me, it was just the fact that I got to be part of a team that got to do things like this every day, but do it together. I mean, we were kind of a genuine crew. And we just, we always look back and say, oh, remember when we used to be together? Oh, where are they now? I love that team. I miss that team. So it was just one of those experiences that I look back on as one of the best. And that in particular, that example was just one of those things where we got to see not only, our, personal, sides come out, but really our best talents and skills were either realized or put to the test for that particular product. So, yeah.
That's super special. What does a counterterrorism calendar look like? I'm sure everyone is wondering.
Well, you can go on eBay. No, I'm kidding. So they actually do have some on eBay, which is hilarious. Really, it's just being able to see dates of timelines of attacks. If you are in, for example, you know how they used to say, see something, say something. So there would be kind of a guide for you to be able to see, these are different types of attacks, different styles of attacks, things to watch out for. These are some of the bad guys that they've been chasing for years, whether they've been, captured or they're still out there. We don't produce it anymore, but, that was our opportunity to share information with the public and with our partners across the community, so that there would be greater awareness of this threat. So, yeah.
It's super cool.
Yeah, what I was going to say is what I love about both of those stories is that the team aspect of both of them, right? And, it makes us feel a little bit older, right? When we're thinking back when we had this great team. But I think it's really encouraging for the students that are in the room, because I think that's what is really cool about working in the intelligence community. And I think a lot of people will say is the team aspect of it, right? The cool teams they got to work on. And so I'm really happy that you kind of highlighted that. And it's a good transition for my next question, which is, you you both have sat in the seats that a lot of these students sit in now, right? And I know it's a very standard question, and maybe you can think about it from an IC lens, but what would you tell your college age self? What kind of advice, or what would you tell that college student, way back when?
I think a few things. The one that comes to mind is probably not to conflate important work with useful work. Sometimes those things don't happen at the same time. Sometimes the work you're doing is incredibly important, but it may not be particularly useful to your audience at the time at which you're creating it. That might be because of timing. It might be because the audience is, something has to change for them, or a larger context has to come into view. But that was a lesson I kind of learned early on, especially doing futures work. There's always going to be kind of a gap there. I think another one is kind of a cliche, but 99% of the things that you worry about are not worth worrying about, really. And a couple of quotes that I have, themes that just keep coming back to me over and over again over the years. One of them, I'll share them with you. One of them is that your reality really is what you pay attention to, 100%. And then the other one sounds a little silly, but there's some depth to it, and I don't know who said this, but full props on it. And that is to be the person that your dog thinks you are.
Love it.
Like when you really think about that, that's those two things, they just keep coming back to me over and over again.
For me, I would say my big piece of advice that I would give myself is say yes to opportunities. I said no to so many opportunities throughout my life, and even in my academic career. I'm a George Mason graduate. So when I was here, and I finally learned how to stop regretting this, but when I was here, I had 2 opportunities to study abroad at Cambridge, study art history abroad at Cambridge. And both times I said no, out of fear about what others might think, or who am I disappointing if I go? And so I said no both times. So 2 years in a row they offered. And my parents were all for it. They were urging me to go. So it's like when your parents are telling you to go overseas, you'd think you'd say yes. And I said no. And so it took me a very long time to get over that bad decision. But it didn't stop there. I did keep making decisions and said no out of fear a lot. And so that means I closed the door on a lot of opportunities. Then who knows where I'd be now. I do believe that I'm in the right place right now in my career and in my personal life. But I do sometimes look back and say, oh, what if? And so I would just say, be sure to say yes. And if you do say no for the right reasons. I think it's a quote by Seneca the Younger that says, our fears are our biggest traitors. And I think that was something that was really real for me, is that I allowed fear to sort of take over, and I betrayed the person who I could be. I betrayed my own potential, out of fear. So I would just say, be sure to say yes. I can't say that enough. I say that to my daughter all the time. And as my sister would put it, she said, do you. And so, yeah, do you.
Thank you for those answers.
Yeah,
they were vulnerable, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. So, it's hard to believe, but we're kind of coming into election season here, right? And women only got the right to vote about 100 years ago, right? And so my question for you both is, if the women who fought for the right to vote, if the suffragettes were in the room with us and they could see women in the world today, and the women students that we have here in the room, what do you think they would say?
So I went and I did my little reminder tour on Google, because I was like, I know all these things, but let me just make sure I'm actually thinking the right thing. And one of the things that really popped out was I think that or one of the things that popped out to me was that not everybody was brought to the table at the same time. And to me, I think they could have been a lot farther ahead had they brought all the women to the table instead of, this group over here, that group over there, and that group over there, not inviting everybody at the same time. I think it's very important. I think if they were here right now in this audience, I think they'd be surprised and say, oh, shoot. Oh, well, if I had only known, or if I had only thought to just invite her, who knows what idea would have been sparked, and who knows, we probably would have thought beyond, the right to vote and the right to hold office. Gee whiz. So that was one thing that was really important to me. What is it? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so I think they could have gone a lot farther if that table had been more diverse. So that's what I took away.
I love that answer.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar. Like it wasn't a broad enough conversation. It wasn't inclusive enough. Back then, I think they would be pleasantly surprised at how far things have come. I think they would also be kind of shocked at the role that technology has probably played in where we are, especially in women's lives, access to information, education, just with science and reproductive rights, but then also online bullying and all the bad things that necessarily go with that. I don't think that would have been something that anybody would have really foreseen, and I think they'd probably be pretty shocked at some of the stuff that's going on now.
It's a good segue.
Oh, right. So we're going to talk about the future now. We kind of gazed into the past, but now we're going to talk about the future. And so I want to think about the future in 100 years. And so right now, Katie and I often say when we're talking to folks, especially about Iron Butterfly, is that we're like, women are in a moment right now in society, in jobs, in everything. Like we're at this kind of inflection point for women. And so I wonder if you look at how might technology and other factors change the world in 100 years from now, and what role does women play in that?
Can I just say that when I was thinking about that, I love the fact that you're in futures, because I was thinking about how might we leverage strategic futures, like that type of planning to like look back at where we are, look at where we are now, and then look to the future about where we could be 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And so I started nerding out and taking notes. I'm like, I'm going to talk to this woman after this meeting. But yeah, I think that especially when it comes to technology, somebody like me, because I'm a visual person, we leverage technology to do what we do. And so I found myself the other day just, playing around with, Chat GPT and Dolly, trying to figure out, okay, how do I, create this visual that actually conveys this specific, look, feel, whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, how can we use that same thing, especially when it comes to the intelligence community? How can we leverage or develop, if we need to, those sorts of technology to really think about, okay, how are we going to write this analysis, or how are we going to share data, or even how are we going to develop this visual? I love the fact that you were even thinking about, when you said dreamscapes, I immediately started thinking about like being in the space versus like a 2D static graphic in front of me, or even something on my computer screen. So how do we create opportunities for folks to really go in depth using AI and machine learning?
I love that. I mean, spot on. One of the things that I always think of when I'm thinking about the future and technology is just human potential. And, we're heading into an age where technology is going to get to know you better and better and better. It's going to know, algorithms are going to, good and bad, understand you on a level that only sensors could, whether it's psychographic and how you're thinking or what you're doing or how you're feeling. It's going to get increasingly sophisticated. I think with that, there's a lot of amazing things that can happen, especially when it comes to creativity. Like the sky's the limit. Your mind is blown at what can happen. At the same time, emotional intelligence and critical thinking is going to be so important, especially since you're going to have technology that will know you so well. You're going to have to be quite sensitive to what inputs are coming in at you at any given moment, and that it's probably not random. There are probably reasons why things are coming in, and I think I think there's a connection to that to soft power and influence, and I think women are particularly good at that. So I think there'll be this interesting space of kind of going all over here, but emotional intelligence and just reaching your potential as a human, I think is going to be fascinating 100 years from now.
So I feel like, and maybe I'm just feeling this, and this is not actually the case, but I feel like this is not 100 years from now. This is
right.
A lot closer to 100.
A lot closer than that.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was.
I'm curious, Rachel, like when you think about the future, I think something we hear from young people a lot is like a lot of fear and anxiety about that future, right? Where like you have technology that knows you better than, most any technology has in the past, right? Like how do you talk about that? Or like how do you think about the future without kind of as Chandra said, like getting overwhelmed by that like fear or anxiety?
Well, and in addition to that, because what I was thinking was let's say there's different generations as well. And so there are folks that are our parents' age that technology is a fear. And, even within your institutions, right? There are probably four different generations, maybe 3 different generations. And how do you speak to, an older generation versus a younger generation who might be more comfortable with it? Sorry.
At the end of the day, it's a tool, right? And I think there's a couple of things going on there. One, we don't have a choice other than to be positive about all this. Like hard stop. It's, we're humans at the end of the day, and we have embodied experiences that the technology does not. And I think as long as you understand, and I don't mean like a deep technical understanding, but as long as you understand the spectrum of possibility that this technology can offer, like I'm talking in particular about AI, I really don't think that this is, I don't think this is necessarily something to have anxiety about. It just means we're going to have to be that much more diligent when it comes to ethics and judgment and governance and all of these different things. I had something else I was going to say and I cannot remember.
I do like the fact that you brought up the ethics piece and making sure that we're using this tool for good and not for bad. And even if we are using it for good, making sure that we have the right protocols in place.
Absolutely.
So that what we put in, the good comes out of it.
Yes.
It's like dirty data in, dirty product out type of thing. So just making sure that we have all the right standards in place and that we're thinking about who's going to be using it. Like there's this book called Invisible Woman. I don't know if anybody's read it, but it kind of talks about how, like one of the examples early on in the book, they talk about highways and how they weren't necessarily built, or some of the earlier highways weren't built with women in mind because it was a lot of the men going to work. And so it was like homework, and not thinking about, oh, I've got to run this errand. And so it's really thinking about the user. So I really believe in user-centered design and really understanding the unmet needs. And it's the same with AI, ML. Like when it comes to technology, we really got to be thinking about the user and not just jumping to the solution because, oh, it might be cool if. So I think that's really going to be important for us. And again, everything is just moving at such a fast pace, even on the visual side. The things that I used to use, they're ancient and they're sunset. Right, the things that I used to do, and I thank God for Notepad and that still exists. But other than that, like all the other technologies that I used to use do not exist anymore. And it's just going at such a high rate of speed that we really need to be more thoughtful and put those measures in place now so that as technology changes, we're at the ready versus always trying to be reactive and catch up.
Absolutely.
I really love those answers. So I think, you know, Rachel, you mentioned kind of like having the sense of positivity and like belief in the future. And so I'm curious from both of your perspectives, like what is the technological advancement that excites you the most about the future? And like how have women been involved in pushing that progress forward?
So one of the things you're probably going to hear a lot about, if not now in the future, that I think is super exciting is something called agentic AI. And this is essentially AI that can, you know, make a lot of autonomous decisions. Imagine, you know, being able to just say, can you, you know, book me a flight, or, you know, a series of actions where it can take the initiative. And this is going to be hugely, it's going to have a huge impact on our world. And kind of tying back to kind of an earlier point, it's also going to be able to know you really, really well. And I think, again, having women as part of the conversation where they are helping to frame and make sure that there is inclusivity in these algorithms, and bias is not, you know, is scrubbed out as much as possible. It's just going to become so embedded in the background that the world is going to look very, very different in, I don't know, however many years.
And why does that excite you outside of not having to book your flights anymore?
I'm excited at there being just less friction in my daily life, cutting and pasting from one thing to another, you know, emailing this, emailing that. You know, there's, I think it was Amy Webb, she's a futurist. She had said at one point that this is the worst that technology is going to be right now. And it's going to get a lot better, you know, and yes, there's a lot that we have to, you know, be wary of and watch out for. But at the same time, there's a lot that's going to, I think, start to kind of fade into the background. And I'm hoping that the ability to just go through your day, reach your potential, you know, have as much of a, you know, a creative experience doing your job is going to get a lot easier and a lot more fun.
I love that answer. Chandra, what do you think? What about you?
My mind is blown right now. No, I'm not really sure which ones I'm excited about. I think for me, it's like I'm just like getting a little bit older, and I struggled to sort of get out of bed this morning. Thinking more about like those assistive technologies, you know, that'll just help me at least stay healthy or remind me of the things that, I mean, I know we have a Fitbit, but you know, if I work in an environment where I can't, you know, bring that with me, but, you know, just ways that I can stay healthy. So even just the other day, I said, hey, ChatGPT, I'm of such and such age, and, you know, I live here and I've got these many kids. Can you develop a plan for me, like a workout plan for me? So like, I kind of want to take it a step further. I don't know what it looks like, but I do know that I do hope that there's going to be a lot of advancements rather in the health sector. And of course, staying true to my heart, the things that I do on the side, like the visualization work that I do on the side, I want to continue to see advancements there, but I want it to be in a way where it doesn't sort of ruin the experience of artists around me. I think you guys probably have heard of, there was, for example, this one gentleman, a digital artist who, you know, produced a piece using AI and got an award and got a prize. And then he sought to copyright it. And everybody was like, pump the brakes, dude. That is our work that drove your piece. Right. And so I want to make sure, and this goes back to like ethics and how we use the tools, and even making sure that we give proper credit, because the last thing I would want is for somebody to take what I do and then, you know, kind of make money off of it without asking for my permission. So from the art side of things, just finding a way to really enhance the work that my artist community does in such a way where they can thrive in their work and not have to get a part-time job because AI is making money for some other person. I don't know if that made sense, but I hope.
No, that totally makes sense, and we feel the same way as creatives. We totally get it. So before we ask our last question, I did want to remind you that we're going to open it up after this question to some student questions. So please, we have 2 microphones up here. So if you'd like to start coming up, we'll probably take 2 or 3 of them. So please, we'd love to hear from you. So if you know Iron Butterfly, you know this is the last question. And in keeping with the name of our podcast, Iron Butterfly, Iron Butterfly was the code name of Eloise Page, which was the first female chief of station at CIA. And she was given the code name by her male compatriots because they thought she was a fierce fighter with a core of steel. And so what we like to do is we like to ask our guests, if you could give yourself a code name, what would it be and why? And we always, I don't think there has been one episode where we have not had someone sit in front of us and say, this is the hardest question that you ask. So I'm gonna give Rachel, because she's been on, so she has one. And so I'm gonna give her.
But she can change it.
She can change
if
it.
she chooses.
But if she wants to keep hers, either way, tell us what it is and tell us why.
I am not changing mine.
Okay.
So back in like season 3, it was Time Traveler. Yeah, I don't know. I spend a lot of time obviously thinking about the future and different things, and it drives my family crazy. But yeah, it just, I think it suits me. But it does mean that I have to focus a lot on staying in the present and staying healthy and in the present. And so it's kind of an ironic name because it also signifies something that I actually need to be doing much more for myself. Just staying in the present.
Very self-reflective. Love it. Chandra, what about you? So we're going to do a drum roll.
Guys, I really thought long and hard about this one. It's Quiet Storm. And first of all, if you're from this area, so I grew up in this area in 96.3 WKYS. Every evening they would open it up. They would open this particular radio show up with Quiet Storm by Smokey Robinson. And so just go back home and listen to that song. It's fantastic. But the reason why I chose Quiet Storm was because, number one, at one of my farewell functions, as parting words, a colleague called me a quiet leader. And I really appreciate that, and it stuck with me. And then I was like, well, what's the second word? What backs that up? And I decided on Quiet Storm I decided on the word storm because a storm can come in and it can kind of like just create change, right? But this is a quiet storm, right? So it's coming in quietly, and like after that storm, you kind of come outside and the sun is shining and the rainbow's out and the air smells like beautifully fresh. And that's how I kind of like want it to be in terms of how other people experience me. I want them to experience me like a quiet storm. I want to know that I've gone in quietly and not disruptive, but I've made a change in their life so that they can come out better on the other end, or that a product can come out better on the other end, and that this community can come out better on the other end. So that's my thing.
Perfect.
I love it.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, so I don't see anyone getting up. Are you getting up to leave or to ask questions? I love it. I mean, you don't know. I gotta ask. Okay, so why don't we start over here and we'll ping pong back and forth. So go ahead. Tell us your name and what year you are, what you're studying, and what your question is.
Oh, my name is Julia. I'm not a student. I'm a post-grad, but I came with NSI. My friend works at NSI, and I work at BGR. But I was wondering if you have any advice for women recently graduated, early in their careers, who would like to pursue a path in intelligence. What advice you would have?
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I started nerding out lately on like designing, using design thinking to design my career. And so it's kind of like thinking about those things that I love to do and those things that people go to me for to really think about where I should be. So that's one thing, just like know where you want to go or at least have an idea of it. One thing I've been blessed with in my career at ODNI, yes, I've been at other agencies before, but at ODNI, it's almost like a choose your own adventure type of thing. So yes, I came in with my graphic design background and thinking that was like I was en route to be like the creative director for that agency. But instead I pivoted and I went more the innovation route, and I fell in love with that because I got to take the best parts of what a graphic designer does and apply it in innovation and apply it in everything after that. So really think about like break down the who of you, like who you are, and like let that sort of guide you. And I would say just like say yes to different opportunities. So if you're on your way in, don't think that there is only one way in. There certainly isn't. I started in as an intern, left, went private sector, came back, did contracts, was a contractor rather, and then went and became an actual, career officer. So one, there's no one way in, and then two, really explore like yourself.
I think the only thing I would add to that, which is along the same line, is be open to what you may end up doing in the IC. I started off as a counterterrorism analyst and a cyber threat analyst. And in a weird way, just by continuing to do what I really enjoyed doing, the jobs kind of morphed around me. So your skills don't have to be matched against a set cookie cutter role. Use you, and to Chandra's point, the gifts that you have to offer may be able to serve the IC in ways that the IC can't even imagine.
And I think a way that bad advice kind of manifests in this way is when people say, oh, if you want to work in the IC, you should major in STEM. If you don't love STEM, then that's not the right advice for you, right? And so I think I love both of those answers because it's about doing what you love, first and foremost.
Thank you very much for your question. Let's go over here.
Hi, my name is Monifa. I came to the U.S. around 9 years ago from Pakistan, and I am an international security and law major with a minor in philosophy and law. As someone who wants to go into an intelligence sector and the more DC side of things, I've noticed that even being as a woman itself, you have to be very strong and very confident overall in the decisions you make. But coming to America, I've noticed that the political opinion is also something that I've seen a lot in a lot of people's character first and foremost. This country has given my family and everyone, my personal experiences, so much opportunity, but I don't really have a solid opinion in the politics around me. Of course, I have, I believe in some things and I don't believe in some things, but I don't identify with one thing or the other. Going into the government, going into intelligence, do you think, and in addition, as a woman and an immigrant, do you think it's important for me to develop that? Or is character ultimately what's going to get me through the intelligence sector and my career as a whole?
I just want to say, I want to pause and say, that's such a good question. And we get that, we've gotten that question before. And it kind of makes Katie and I sad when we get that question, because you shouldn't have to think that you got to pick a side. And so I'd love to hear what you guys, we have an answer as well, but we'd love to hear what you think.
I think you answered your question. It's character, and when you're a civil servant, you're nonpartisan, you're not taking sides, and you have to remain as objective as possible about that. And that's something that we take incredibly seriously. It's character and being able to just do the job and do the mission as it needs to get done, regardless of who's in office.
I have really nothing to add to that. It's just really putting all that aside, because I know that the folks that have been on the different teams that I've worked on, we all have different perspectives, different ideas, different experiences, different beliefs, and we all come together, and we're friends, and we're working on the mission, and that's what matters the most. That we are focused on that we take that seriously. And as long as we have that as our focal point, everything else kind of just sort of falls away.
I think the only thing that I would add to that too is we've interviewed, as part of Iron Butterfly, analysts in the intelligence community who have worked on an issue for decades. And actually what we hear from them is the more they learn about something, the less black and white it becomes, and the less they have an opinion about that thing. So I would just say the fact that you are open-minded and like don't necessarily know exactly what your opinion is actually a very good thing, and can be an analytical strength in some ways.
Great point.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
That
so
was a
much.
great question. Hi.
Hi, I might have to lower this. So my name's Reagan. I'm also not a student here. I'm a student at American University in the graduate program. I also work at BGR and have a friend at NSI. So I was just wondering what challenges women in the intelligence field or community face, and how you all have battled that.
Great. Chandra, you want to go first?
She's doing her slow thinking thing.
Sorry. Oh, I should know better.
Let me think. Let me digest that. I think everybody's challenges are different. I have a lot of intersections. For me, I'm Black, I'm female, I'm older. I'm a parent. So all of these different things, and I'm also in a way like not the traditional person, because I'm not an analyst, and I always thought, oh, that makes me odd, but so the struggles that I have might not be the struggles that Rachel had, but I would say for me, it was really about believing in what I brought to the table. I was talking to a colleague the other day, and I was like, how do you move through the space like that? Like, you're so confident, like you know how to speak truth to power. And like, he's just not shy about it. And he said, because he spent time kind of like he spent time collecting his receipts, if you know what I mean. He spent time like putting in the work and getting confident in what he brought to the table, so that if anybody came to him and questioned him, he could easily say, well, here you go. I've got this receipt right here. And so that's, for me, I think that's what I want to get to. So I'm still working on the challenges that I've had. I've overcome some, whether it's like, sexism, when I was younger, or even like the ageism, people thinking that I might not have what it takes to be in that room. Just remembering I'm in that room. Right? You're in this room for a reason, because somebody chose you. And so like making sure to believe that for yourself, I think is really important. So I think the challenges that I've experienced, whether the external ones, yeah, they're always going to be there, but I think it's the internal challenges that we need to overcome. And just remembering that we put in the work and that we deserve to be in that room.
I really like how you frame that. I'd say there's kind of two things for the internal. You're going to have so many different identities over the course of your life, whether you're a wife or a mother or whatever it is. And so, maintaining who you are and not getting lost up in any one role is super important. And I know when I had kids, it was like, whoa, who am I? Who am I now? You go from, doing work that's just very, very cool and interesting to like changing diapers and all that goes with it. And, it's interesting. But on the external side, I think the U.S. intelligence community is, it's unbelievably progressive. There's nothing like walking into a room to do a briefing when you're perhaps having a conversation with a service from another country that may not be as progressive, and it's a room, your side is a room full of, really young, badass women. And that's not the demographic on the other side of the table, let's just say. So I think, there's a lot of confidence to be drawn from just working in this community alone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello there. My name is Ethan Burke. I'm a business analytics major at GMU. I'm a senior here, and my question was, how do you know, like, how do you leverage those intersectionalities that Chandra that you mentioned to create different products for the intelligence community?
Awesome, thanks.
Like those different identities and intersectionalities. That's what I'm getting at.
No, that's a really good question. So I would think that, yeah, that's a really great question. So I'm thinking about my time when I was doing graphic design on the line, and even when I was leading the design team, and those intersectionalities came into play when it was like, say, if you're doing a certain product and you're thinking, you always have to think with the audience in mind. So who's going to be reading this? So if it's a female, or I'm going to think, oh, well, maybe we need to, state it this way, or maybe this person had this experience or background, or maybe these are their priorities. Well, I know from my experience working, in this, or going to George Mason University, or, being a Black female, whatever it is, I'm able to pull from those different experiences and create a product that's unique to me that still falls under the brand, which is, I don't know if I'm getting at it correctly, but I almost feel like I don't even have to, when I'm doing those products, I don't have to think about the intersectionality. It all just sort of comes out on paper.
I love that. The work that Chandra does with visualization is incredible, and it's sometimes that's literally being able to find what the intersectionality is, because between different topics is what's going to get you over the line. I mentioned earlier the team that I work with, Liz Vanderveen and Jesse Smith. Jesse's graphic designer. You want one of those people as one of the initial core people on your team. There are, most of the time when we're brainstorming and we're doing work, I can't find the words to what I'm trying to communicate and express. I have a picture, and it's folks like, Chandra and Jesse, who I work with, who can go, bring that to life and communicate something that just words don't translate.
Did you say business analytics?
Yeah. Yes, that's why I was interested.
Yeah,
in
is there a data visualization piece to that, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I in my world, data drives design, right? And so there are so many, and it's funny because even though I'm not in the design side of the house anymore, I still see how important it is to have somebody like you at the table. So we'll be, thinking about some random thing, and it's like, okay, how about if we, do X? I'm like, well, wouldn't it be much easier if we were able to visualize that? We need to be able to show these trends. Well, nobody at this stinking table knows how to visualize this stinking trend. But if we had a business analytics person there at the table, we'd be a lot farther ahead and be able to answer the question or be able to identify the intelligence gaps. So just bringing that skill set is so necessary in so many ways, where back in the day, we used to have to show and prove why visuals mattered, why it was so important that you couldn't just have numbers buried in a paragraph on a page. But in order for the product to be more impactful, we needed to show the graph, or if it were interactive, show the dynamic trend across time, for example. So I love the fact that that's your background, and how important data visualization is, especially in this world. A lot of folks, especially in leadership, if you read any of the strategy documents out there, it talks about the importance of data and how it's so necessary and critical to inform our decision making. So I feel like you're in the right place at the right time, buddy. Yeah.
Great question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Lily, and I'm a video game design major. And you guys
come to the right place.
You guys talked briefly about how AI is kind of getting bigger and bigger, and it kind of scares me because now AI can generate pictures and art that takes us hours to create. So do you have any advice for artists or designers that are entering this rapidly changing field?
Great question.
Can you talk about the gaming, please?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think just keeping up on, on technology is a huge part. But one of the areas of research that we're doing right now is human machine teaming, human AI teaming, and AI enabled NPCs, non-player characters. I'm sure you're very familiar with, is growing in importance, and the extent to which you can, as the technology is getting better, learn to get the technology to bring out the best in you. There's a whole dynamic to being able to, prompt engineering, getting out what you need from the technology, but your own potential will probably grow, and you'll contribute more the more that you're able to work with AI better and better, and especially since there's LLMs and a lot of it's conversational. I think there's a lot of potential there to go beyond what you thought you'd be able to do. I don't see video game designers' roles getting any smaller. I think they're only going to get larger, and a lot of that will depend upon how well you're able to team with an AI.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you said something earlier, and you just like sort of foot stomped the fact that it's a tool and it doesn't replace you. And I'll look at a piece that was you're doom scrolling on Instagram, and you see some like amazing image, and it has no emotion behind it. There is something to be said about the human behind the art. There is nothing that can replace what you put in. Because I surely remember, going in. I was, working in the arts building, walking away and leaving the computer on overnight to let my 3D piece render, and then coming back and finding out that it crashed. But seriously, I can't imagine a world without artists. And there is no possible way. Yes, it can sort of augment our process. And so I think it's really up to us to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't think we just let it run over us, right? Yeah. I don't think we let technology run over us. I think we need to take it and harness it, just like they harnessed light back in the day. It made it available in a light bulb so it could fill, every house with light. And we got to do the same thing, with AI and machine learning. We got to make sure that we harness so that we can make sure that our art and our emotion and those things that we bring to the table come through, and all it's doing is just, sort of like maybe putting the cherry on top, or maybe making sure that we are able to produce it faster. But yeah, there's no replacing who you are. So I think it's just like remembering that and not sitting back and letting technology happen, but instead taking technology and making it work for you, like you mentioned, Rachel.
Thank you so much. And I think we have one final question. Awesome.
First things first, hello, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with everyone today here at Mason. We really do appreciate you. My name is Hannah Hoffrichter. I'm a student of psychology here at Mason, and also the president and founder of the Intelligence Community Network. My question is, there is a reputation when it comes to the intelligence community and government work as a whole that it is absolutely awful with work-life balance. So I was wondering if you have any tips
Great question.
as to how to manage work-life balance effectively.
Great question. Thank you.
I mean, I will just say that I am in a stinking amazing office because we got lectured for not using our fitness time, right? We got lectured for not, signing up for our telework agreement, now, right? So we just got that reminder yesterday in our team meeting, be sure to sign for your telework agreement. So there is work-life balance. A lot of us, especially when we're younger, we come in and we want to go hard in the paint, right? And we think we got to just take the world by storm. But then, life happens, and we're in a place now where we have capabilities. Technology has allowed us and enabled us to be able to work from home when we couldn't. So there are ways, there is balance that you can create. And I think the government has done a really good job. The intelligence community has done a really good job of realizing the fact that there has to be balance in order for us to do mission well and effectively. And so that telework stuff that we do and the fitness time that we do, and even having access to a gym and trainers has just made us be able to be more effective in our roles.
1,000%. I mean, the work-life balance, I think, has been terrific. And in particular, in the last few years, the importance on health and wellness has only grown at ODNI and other places. CIA actually just in the last year hired their first chief well-being officer for that purpose. So they take it very, very seriously. And like in my office, you're reminded you didn't take your wellness time this week. You need to take it, and the leadership is very vocal about what they're doing that day. We have tag ups in the mornings, and we're going over schedules, and leadership will put on their schedules, this is when I'm committing time to do exercise or wellness or whatnot, and there's cohorts within the agency that do this together. So I think the IC is so progressive in supporting the work-life balance.
I think just in addition, but also being realistic, there are certain jobs like a PD briefer or something like that where going into it that
And it's by choice.
And it's by choice, right? You don't have to take that position. So just keeping that in mind. Thank you so much. So I don't have to ask. Oh, no. Go ahead. We can do one last question if you guys are okay with it. Okay. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jordan. I graduated back in May, but I'm with NSI now. And you both were talking about kind of looking forward with how you're trying to make AI more inclusive, but what is the intelligence community or tech sector, whoever has their hands in it, what are they doing to kind of mitigate the decades of bias that the LLMs are pulling from and learning from?
Great question. Thanks.
There is a ton of work going on in this space. The White House put out its national security memo for AI, and one of the biggest pieces of that is AI governance and putting the best minds in government and the private sector against this challenge to make sure that ethics and governance and whatnot are applied to how we're going to use AI going in the future. I think part of what is extremely positive about this is that there is a recognition that there is a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of things that need to happen in order to be able to use this technology ethically and in the best way possible.
Well, wow. This, I have to say, George Mason really brought it, because these are the most audience questions we've ever had at a university event. So thank you very much. First and foremost, Chandra, Rachel, thank you so much for doing this with us. Thank you for now being an Iron Butterfly alum. Of course, we have to thank NSI, we have to thank George Mason for hosting this fabulous event, being continuous supporters and founding sponsor of Iron Butterfly. We definitely, if you could bear with us, we want to thank, Jamil, Martha, Devlin, Keelan, all the GMU staff, the Intelligence Community Network for coming and helping out, the students that read this earlier, the intros. And
Jessica. In the audience, Jessica.
Oh,
she's been with us since the beginning.
From the beginning, yes, Jessica. And
if you don't follow us, pull your phone out. And we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram. We post all kinds of fun content. You ask Megan where you can find us, the answer is always everywhere. So if you're not following us, you should be.
So thank you all very much. And until next time, stay fierce.